Hey guys, welcome to another edition of How Are You? Today's episode is a follow up to the episode about control. But in this episode, and this one might run a lot longer than the last one, because I'm going to be talking about uh, fear, influence, and pressure. And the reason I feel like it's really important for me to talk about these things is because there seems to be uh, especially with all people, this isn't just a matter of you or me. This affects everyone. Um, and that's why I felt it necessary to make this episode right now, because it's been on my mind for a very long time about how other people dictate what we end up doing, what we will continue to do, and what our lives end up being in terms of not just society, but in terms of our friends, in terms of the people we surround ourselves with in everyday life or for the rest of our lives. By a yearly basis, a monthly basis, depending on who we choose to surround ourselves with, can really dictate our own locus of control. So, feeding off of the last episode, I want to focus more on what other people can do to us and how we can decide at what we are capable of based on our own understanding and recognition of the fact that a lot of other people have influence over our decision making, over how we approach our own lives and our own. This is about you and me. This is about society, and this is about how we can overcome aspects of those elements that really dictate our own well-being and happiness. So that's why today's theme is about how others put us in a position of fear, put us in a position of intimidation, put us in a position of hopefulness, maybe. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think how my last episode talked more about what we control. I think it was important to follow up with how that type of control can be perceived and dictated by what we're led to believe. And for an example, in terms of that, is I wanted to start by saying that we might think that certain things are good for us, and in some cases they are, because in everyday life and in society and in what our friendships and the people that we dislike, the people that we idolize, the people that we consider to be role models, that type of stuff gives a lot of power to the other person. So what I mean by that is, even though I'm the first word I'm going to use is fears, because because our own insecurities and our own beliefs about what we think and what we expect to be right and wrong are usually taught to us, and so who we decide to be our own teachers are for us to decide, right? But we don't ever really think about that, and I don't think a lot of people, and in fact, this isn't really something I think about, this is something that I know to be true, is that we tend to put a lot of faith and a lot of responsibility away from ourselves in terms of what dictates our own actions, our own thoughts, from what we learned from observing others, from hearing from others, from listening to other people, and including me, from this own video series itself. I figured it was, since this is episode 4 and it's already been a month since I started doing this type of thing, I think it's my obligation to let the people, the viewers, and the people who are commenting know that it's important to really sit back and think about what makes me think this way right now, who's responsible for that, and what in my own locus of control is dictating that. So that's why for the next, several minutes or 10 minutes or so, I want to talk just about how we tend to let fear and anxiety and influence and the unknown and our desire to seek definition and to seek clarity to kind of provide a lot of influence to our decision making. So ever since I moved out of my mother's place, like the reason I wanted to move away was because I wanted to be able to eliminate those factors. So the reason it's necessary for me to make this video is because I know that my mother is a huge influence on my own decision making, my own path to my own success, my own determinants of what I perceive to be a happy, healthy lifestyle is sometimes prescribed to me by my environment, my family, my friends. And those are all choices that we can make. We can choose who we surround ourselves with. A lot of people tend to use an old adage that you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. And although that's true, I think in most cases we tend to overlook that type of responsibility for ourselves. Our responsibility is that we live in we are human beings. We're very social creatures with each other, and even with other species that we can't quite communicate with. We put a lot of dependency on cats, dogs, pets, and sometimes communicate with them as if they can understand, because sometimes we might have like this fear that we have these thoughts within us that aren't being expressed to the right people, or they're not being how can I put this, like vented properly so that we feel the satisfaction of reassurance, or we're making the right decisions, or we have the proper guidance. Sometimes we might lack those things, and the reason I'm making this now is just because I don't want people to put too much faith into immediate support or immediate gratification, immediate support, because sometimes if we do that, it can lead to our own demise, our own setbacks, our own our own failure to continue to grow as individuals and as a community, because we let ourselves get taken advantage of in a mental or physical standpoint, just because we put so much faith and belief into things that we thought were secure and things that have always been there for us. So we allowed them to manipulate and pressure our own understanding of what's good for us and what's not actually that good for us. And I don't think this video is any exception. I don't want anyone who watches this to think that I have all the answers, or that that everything I'm saying is completely true, or that I'm an intelligent being, or that because of any of those things, or whoever they perceive to be, an experienced or guiding figure to dictate their actions. So keeping that in mind, the reason I want to bring those, and notice that like I'm using the words like fear and pressure and intimidation and that type of language. The reason I'm using those like dark and I guess kind of cloudy and depressing words is because I want people to really think about who they're allowing into their lives. Like I think one of my strong suits to shift to more of a positive note is that I put a lot of faith into my friendships. I put a lot of thought into who I talk to, who I associate with, the current job that I have, and the reason that I have it isn't actually dictated by how much money I'm making. And I think that a lot of what other people told us to be true and right about what's important to us as people is to make, a certain amount of money or a certain amount of respect from people that we'll probably never meet in our lives. That might not be what we need as people, but maybe it is. I can't, like I said, I can't speak for every single person. Maybe that's what you need as a person, because I'm not you, simply put. And this is just from my own personal experience, and this is why I always encourage people that watch these videos to participate in countering or conflicting my own thoughts and my own language that I'm providing for these topics of conversation, to bring something different to the table, because we just are such different beings. But we allowing others to influence what that means to us is kind of what I want to prevent. I want you to speak as your own person, although I acknowledge, and we should all acknowledge, that there were a lot of influencing factors, whether it be our family, our friends, our work, our environment, the type of resources that are available to us during those times can all be factors of who we are, who we will become. And the biggest example I want to use for this video, this very drawn out video, is that I always thought that I had a lot of insight on what it meant to have like a healthy relationship, not just with friends, but with, a significant other person, whether it be, of your own gender or a different gender or whichever, because I know we've become more complex in terms of what we find attractive in a person. And that's, I think, a good start. But, I think to go beyond that aspect of what is truly attractive in people, I challenge a lot of people to really critically and analyze what that person provides for them. So, it's not really a secret to the people that really understand me that I haven't had a lot of relationships in terms of a significant other person, because I already, it's not that I don't want it. It's that I don't see the need for it right now. Like I'm doing a lot of personal growth on my own, because I'm determining what I'm allowing to influence my life and giving control to myself and taking responsibility and accountability for my own actions and my own growth before I start to live a life of interdependency with an immediate other person that I can completely trust. And I believe, just based on the language that I've used, that clearly there's a lot that goes into those things that, a lot of us, because of maybe the fear of being alone or the pressure of society, of the people that came before us and told us that and demonstrated for us, whether it was through language or just through example, showed us that if you do this, you get this. But that's not necessarily true for all of us, because a conversation I had with Zach, Lunk 182 today, or this evening rather, is that you can, just because you're the product of your parents doesn't mean you are your parents. It doesn't mean just because what they did is what you should emulate and what you should replicate, because you are not them. You are just you, and that's as simple as it gets. And just for the sake of to completely switch gears, and I guess maybe in an ironic twist or something, that just because you come from that background doesn't mean that that's your solution. It doesn't mean that's what necessarily makes you happy, which is why some people, I think, get a little confused, is because they feel that pressure, they feel that anxiety, they feel that societal demonstration of what works, that means that has to work for them in order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled, in order to achieve personal growth. And I'm lucky enough that I had the presence of mind to move past that and not rely so much on a significant other type relationship, monogamous relationship, that I needed to have an immediate other in order to continue to grow, in order to continue to achieve and learn, and that I was able to look more inward. And that's what I'm kind of trying to challenge others to do in this video, is that you have your own mind, your own presence of mind, that maybe we're not focusing on a little or too much, because of what our society looks like and how we kind of continue to how we continue to exist within that loop of doing what looks good from our parents, what we've been told from our parents, what we've been shown through our friends, or pressured, by peers or by family members, or by the past, that might not be necessary for the present or even the future. And that's a lot to take in. That's a lot to process. This is a very big topic to consider in terms of the last episode, the locus of control, and what other people, regardless of if they're related to you by blood or if you chose to be with those people through friendship or through relationships or through bonds, that maybe we just need to look more inward. Maybe we just need to look within ourselves and ask ourselves more questions. Do I need to have another person in order to be happy? Am I lacking something that someone else can provide for me? In terms of a relationship, in terms of companionship. So what I want from this video in the form of a question is, do you rely on a relationship to improve? Do you rely on friendships to improve? Do you think friendships and networks are necessary to improve? I would personally argue that relationships and friendships are important, but what I'm proposing is that it requires a lot more thought than we're actually doing in terms of our own good, that could potentially lead to forms of depression and forms of anxiety, and forms of just living the life that we might not want to be living. And with that being said, respond the way you want to respond. Respond how you feel is necessary, regardless of if it's coming from a source of influence. After pondering, enough thought of the topic of discussion that I've been presenting for the last 20 minutes, given all of those things, do you still believe, or do you still think that there's something that I haven't brought to the table yet, that I think that as a community we should consider, as an online community is necessary, that keeps them going, keeps them progressing, and keeps them motivated, that I haven't demonstrated in myself, because I don't want to act like this series is the answer. It's more just a gateway for discussion and a gateway for new topics and new considerations, that I personally want to hear more about. So I'm proposing this to really just anyone that watches. Tell me, after consideration, what do you fear in life? Do you fear of dying alone? Do you fear of not being in a relationship, even though you think that people want you to be in a relationship, or you think that being, dependent on other people is what motivates you and gets you to achieve more than you thought possible, or maybe some examples of that. that I would provide at this time, but just for the interest of your own time, because this has just gone on way too long. That other people might want to hear. So with that being said, I'll conclude this video saying, think about what your fears are. Think about what you think you've been pressured to do or to believe based on the people you love, based on the people that you've resented, based on your own experiences and your own learning. You know, who are you and what makes you you? So that's all I have for today. You know, I would consider this a very important topic compared to everything I've ever talked about, because everything I've ever talked about has just been about looking inwardly. But now I want you to look externally in order to shape the inward. Okay? I want you to really consider that, because that's something that I consider on a daily basis, but I honestly don't believe that enough people are, and I still think I can improve and do better, and that's why I like the feedback. What can we do better to firmly analyze and improve consistently in that daily basis, so that we can get to a point in our young lives or old, depending on, you know, who you are. It's not restricted on age or anything like that. I'll never believe it's too late to make those changes and to understand what influences us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your supporting this series, by the way. And I'll see you next time, guys. But please, if you have something to say, say it. And otherwise, love you guys.